So hello everyone, I'm Chris from AI Events, Airline Information, and I'm here with Daniel. And Daniel, I'll let him introduce himself and his company, but I'll give a couple of housekeeping items for our Airline, NDC, and Travel Partners webinar. So first, you can type in your questions in the questions box, and we'll get to them as we go. So in your go-to control webinar control panel, the questions box, feel free to type in questions. And if you have any trouble viewing today, just log out of GoTo and come back. It's probably your local internet connection. So with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel. I'll let you introduce yourself and introduce your company, and then introduce the panels, and then we'll get into the questions from yourself and the audience. So thank you, Daniel, for being with us today, and I'm signing off.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Chris. Yeah, as Chris said, my name is Daniel Friedli. I'm a partner at Travel in Motion. Travel in Motion is a boutique consultancy in the airline commercial space, focusing a lot on these topics related to NDC and one order and the transformation towards offer and order management and retailing with airlines. But much more important is we have a great group of panelists with us today. Maybe panelists, you can all come on board and show your faces. We've got with us Conor Sullivan, the Chief Product Officer of Datalex. We've got with us Scott Brennan, CEO at LinksRez. We've got with us Oliver Ranson, partner at Ranson Pricing. And last but not least, we've got with us Stig Williams, Head of International Travel and Partnerships at the Avis Budget Group. Great to have you all with us today.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to the topic before we actually dig it down with into the questions with our panelists here. But as probably most of you know, NDC was initiated in around 2012, and it's been progressively developed and improved over the past years. The adoption is increasing, and COVID did give it some additional boost, we've seen. Even the GDSs, after some long and hard thinking, decided to implement NDC, both for agencies in terms of accessing content, but also for the airlines as their IT providers a few years ago, and are on that journey now as well. But it's unfortunately not all perfect, kind of far from it in a sense. There's been challenges related to sort of the non-standard standard, lack of interline capability, and a few other features are still not implemented. Another point we keep hearing is that a lot of airlines aren't even using NDC to the extent that it was designed for. So to tailor content to the users and to segments or to the agencies, leaving travel agencies asking, why should we do this? However, I am an NDC promoter and believer. I mean, that's what we focus a lot of the work of our company around. But at the same time, I have to say there is still a bigger problem with NDC. A huge part of the travel value chain was just kind of ignored, just kind of left on the side. So car rentals, hotels, trips, excursions, taxi, ground transportation, it's all not really there yet. And it should be. If the airlines want to focus on becoming retailers, then that should be part of this overall offering. So this is really something that we'd like to focus on a little bit today. And with that, there's a few questions that we're going to focus on, or a few topics of the conversation. So is it even possible? And if not, why not? Are there workarounds? How can we integrate all of these different entities? Do these other entities, and that's why we have a few of them on the call today, are they even interested? Do they even want to go down this path? And how do they solve those problems today? And how do the value chain partners even view NDC going forward? And can we as an industry collectively, can we be more inclusive in the end? So those are basically the areas we hope to cover. I think, first of all, Stig, maybe I'm going to have you answer this first part of the question is, do you, especially coming from the car space or the car rental space, do you feel ignored by the airline industry, or did you kind of not really ever want to be part of it in the beginning?
First of all, I have to say, totally not ignored by the airlines, and I feel we have some great partnerships with many of the global airlines in the world. And And obviously, we as the Avis Budget Group, we are providing our content through our XML and APIs, but also through all our different partners. And going back to the airlines and NDC, we haven't had a lot of conversations through the years since they launched it. And I think that is more about sort of the partnership we are having with the airlines. It's maybe now the time to actually look at this as an opportunity for the airline, and for the airline to be having an opportunity to provide the products and services they want to provide to then consumers, like what they are providing on their own website, but also to be aligned with what they are offering through their loyalty programs, so they can actually use the NDC to push those products as well, to have sort of an opportunity for the end consumer then to earn miles and points on the different elements of the booking and make it much more seamless. So I think it's absolutely an opportunity. I don't feel they have been ignored. I think it's just an opportunity to sit down and discuss the opportunity.
Scott, if I hand the same question to you, I know you're not a provider of car and hotel, but you've been around the industry, and with LinksRez, you consolidating content. How do you see this?
Yeah, I do think that the airlines have ignored a lot of the rest of the travel verticals. I don't know that it's necessarily been out of any belief that the other verticals don't add value, but until they really can unlock the value of NDC themselves for their own product, I think they're going to really struggle to make it work really effectively in the hotel and car or tour space. They've still got some work to do on their own end before they start expanding sideways into other verticals. That being said, I do feel that the standard itself kind of was developed to be more air-centric than it probably should have been. It didn't appropriately contemplate the fact that people do more than just get on an airplane and then return on an airplane. There's other stuff that happens on the end of that journey and in the middle. So, I see opportunity for the standard to evolve. But again, I think the airlines really need to embrace it themselves before they can focus on solving problems for Stig and Avis or Hilton or Marriott.
Yeah. And speaking of the standard, I mean, Conor, at Datalex, you guys implement the standard between airlines and the seller community. Is the standard really in a way that it can't convey this additional information today? Is that the standard? And is the standard a not really standard at the same time?
Well, yeah, maybe to answer your first, is it technically possible? Yes, very simply with a few adjustments, they could make this possible. Where the difficulty probably lies with some of this is who can actually make this available. So in order to make third-party content available through the airlines, through NDC, it's not just about making it available through the NDC API. What you need is the offer capability to be able to mix it in with all of your other offers. And then you actually need an order management system that just isn't a wrapper that sits on top of a PSS. You need something that is a true order system that can take every order items for every third-party content. So this is why I say us and Datalex, we do this very easily on the direct channel. We own the REST API. We get to manipulate the REST API as we want to, as quick as we want to. When you get into a standard like NDC, this becomes a little bit more difficult. You vendors who don't have order management systems, who probably don't want to move this as priority number one. You've the GDSs who don't want to move this off the GDS as a priority number two. So it kind of moves down the chain as a little bit of a priority because it's a little bit more difficult than some of the easier products of just the air and air ancillaries. So I think there's a couple of things there that, I don't think it's definitely going to come, but I can see why it's just kind of prioritized down a little bit. And it will be slower because by default being a standard, you're just going to be slower and you'll need more participants in play to get you going.
Or can I just pass this on to you, because something that Conor just said is probably right down your alley, and that's around offer creation and then I guess how do you put all these things together and how do you price it all, package it all, and send it back to whoever is asking? Is that one of the key challenges around all of this? Is it not even a technical challenge?
I'm sure it is, Daniel. And when I look at the airlines where I've worked or where I know people who work, and I look at their organizational structure within revenue management and within commercial and within the sort of people who work with the NDC environment, I see a lot of organizational structure right now around compliance and simply integrating the technologies. What I don't see is creativity in the commercial product creation, creativity in the commercial management, and creativity in the applications of NDC to things that you and I can't even think of today because it's in the future. I don't see the pricing strategy team working on content that's right for NDC. I don't see airlines having a strategy around how much commission they should be earning from different travel partners. And if you say to an airline, well, does NDC allow you to actually charge 0 fares or maybe even a negative fare and earn all your money from commission from the hotel rooms, restaurant meals, bungee jumping over the Grand Canyon? A lot of the people who work at the airline will say, I don't know. That's for the management to decide. Many managers haven't yet taken that decision, and it's a very tough decision to take, especially considering that most airlines who are grappling with NDC now are not the Lufthansas and Singapore Airlines of the world, but smaller organizations who are having a new technical standard brought in to a complex operating environment without the resources to deal with it.
And is it that a lot of these smaller airlines today that you're probably referring to, I mean, they have, let's say, simplistic white labels on the website, or maybe even it's just a referral to another website of a provider. Can they even afford to do this? Can they manage the technical complexity on how to get this different type of content from different places?
Well, I'm sure they can, Daniel, if they think not like an airline, but like a startup. If they imagine their commercial organization as an agile, lean startup organization where it's okay to fail, I think they can succeed. Now, of course, the first priority of all these airlines, large or small, and anyone who wants to enter the business always has to be safety and then operational reliability. But the commercial department always has been and always will be a couple of steps away from that. So I think that for the smaller airlines, the trick is to accept the fact that your operational teams, your pilots, your cabin crews, your maintenance, repair and overhaul teams, these guys are all going to be operating as they always have been. But in commercial, let's start thinking a bit more leanly. Let's start thinking a bit more agile. Let's be prepared to fail, do something, spend a small amount of money on it, and if it fails, stop doing it. Now, that might mean that some of them decide that NDC is the right product for them. Some of them might even decide that they're going to go their own way. Maybe they're going to build their own super app like AirAsia, or their own travel products company like JetBlue Travel Products. You don't have to be a big airline to do one of those projects, because there are startups all over the world developing apps, developing new business concepts and commercial models. I'm sure that airlines, rental car, hotel, the entire travel value chain can unlock a lot of value and a lot of happy customers by thinking this way.
Scott, I saw you when Oliver's explaining that you're acknowledging and nodding, kind of in agreement. So you have a similar perspective on that.
I have a perspective that commercially they haven't put a lot of thought into what they want to do, and I agree that there are standards or ways to do it outside of NDC if they choose to do it. I do think that one challenge that you've got, and I'm sure Conor's team struggles with it too, is naming standards are different in each industry, right? And so in an airline, you've got a passenger. Stig and Avis have got a driver. Hotels have got guests. I mean, we can't even align around those terms and that nomenclature, right? And I mean, it's a pretty superficial example, but data normalization, it's a big part of what you have to do if you're going to do this right, is so that you recognize a traveler throughout all phases of the journey, and we normalize those inputs, whether it's through API calls or a database structure, so that information flows through the entire system. That to me, I mean, that's the other piece of the challenge. I think commercial teams can design all kinds of things that the airline could never deliver, because that's what commercial teams do. I've been in those roles. Right? I've designed products that were probably unmanageable and unwieldy. But technically, we need to normalize that data. And again, it's what we do. I think it's what Datalex does as well, is trying to bring it all together so that different travel verticals can actually speak to each other, because it is a chicken and the egg. You can't build a product unless you can envision it, but you can't build a product if you can't bring the building blocks together also.
I think that Scott's absolutely right with that, but I would say that there is one place where it doesn't matter whether you're an airline, a rental car, a hotel, a restaurant, or anyone else. There's one common ground that I would start from, which is that all of these people have end users who are buyers and end users who are not buyers and buyers who are not end users. If I were thinking about the common ground, that's where I think about looking first.
Stig, are these some of the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis when integrating with airlines, either directly or through aggregators and other means?
Well, it's very different from airline to airline, and obviously when you are talking about integration we are doing with many of the global airlines, when you are talking about add-to-basket functionalities and trying to maximize the conversion on the website, I think many airlines have actually done quite well, and we have some great results from lots of our partnerships. But I think what we are talking about here is sort of, you know, maybe we should take some of those learnings, which what they have done on their own website, what kind of learnings can we take from that, and use that for other distribution channels for where the airline are distributing the products, because they are obviously not maximizing that opportunity. Say that 1/3 of the passengers are booking on the website, but what about the 2/3 which is booking through our travel agencies or TMCs? You know, is it an opportunity for the airline to also provide the products through those channels, being aligned with what they are providing? And you know, like ourselves, we have the opportunity to provide both a leisure product but also a business travel product, so we can provide the products, and if they are then willing to sell those products and provide those.
And you just said something opening up where you said it's a bit different for every airline that we work with. I mean, isn't that already a key point where we should be looking towards normalization then?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because it's a very different from airline to airline and how much they want to invest into the partnership and the opportunity they see. Obviously, what we are saying and what we are doing when we are working with an airline, we can improve sort of the conversion we can get depending on the integration and the touch points we can get on the website. But again, it's coming back to what Oliver said, is the commercial team, the management team, depending on what are the strategies and how well would they like to integrate all those ancillary products and see that great opportunity. And of course, for the airlines, the margins are very small on the ticket itself, so it's a great opportunity to earn cash, and the low-cost carriers have done very well. So I'm sure that the eyes have opened up for many of the world's airlines that this is actually big business. This is a great opportunity. We own that customer journey. Let's try to maximize the opportunity.
And Conor, looking at those integrations more from a technical perspective, how mature are those? Because again, today you probably do those third-party integrations with various different third-party products from the airline's perspective. Are they all totally different technologically, or are hotels aligned and cars aligned in a different way, or what's the story here?
You'd be surprised how aligned they are. So, I mean, we've integrated, you know, well over 100 at this stage in Datalex across all our customers, and Oliver mentioned JetBlue there as one of those examples. I mean, across car, hotel, ground transportation, activities and tours, we've built a set of product services. But I think the difference to what Scott was maybe talking about is, you know, we get to control what is that nomenclature within Datalex, within our direct product, within our dynamic product. Bringing that to NDC and bringing that to a global standard that we got to get every other vendor and every airline to agree with is just going to take a little bit longer and a little bit of time. When I make a mistake in Datalex, and as the owner of product, I get to make the final call on these things. When I get to mistake, I can update the version in Datalex by end of today. In NDC, we're going to have to wait for the next version, which is not coming tomorrow. So I think I can just move much quicker on our dynamic product, on our direct product, than we can on the NDC product. So I think you're just going to find this will happen, and what Scott mentioned around the normalization nomenclature, that's going to happen, and we will get there. Most of the third parties are more aligned than we see. So of the 100 we deal with, and it's mostly the bigger third parties that we integrate with across those areas, they are fairly aligned in terms of the underlying format. It is not that difficult of a job to normalize it into a standard content. We'd find that on certainly on our direct and dynamic products.
Daniel, this is Chris. I'm going to jump in only because we got a lot of questions coming in fast and furious. And so I'd also like to thank the audience. We have a lot of people from India. So I know Oliver did some work for an airline in India. I'm not sure if that influenced, but we've got the Indian Airlines in force. So thank you guys for joining us in the evening. One of the first questions, and there's a bunch, but it's about the ROI of NDC. So you know, it's a little bit murky, the ROI, maybe even within an airline or working with a partner. So it says, how do brands find and communicate the ROI of NDC? And this will push adoption. So anyone want to comment on that, or Dan, you want to direct it to someone on the panel?
Yeah, I don't know, Oliver, from the product and pricing perspective, that the offer creation perspective that you deal with, where do you see that?
If you want to know the ROI of your product, you've got to know what it is you're going to sell. So I think that airlines have got the NDC and creativity process the wrong way around here. They've integrated the technology, and now they're looking for use cases. Really, it should be the other way around. You should be thinking about what you want to do with it, and then you decide to integrate it. You know, imagine it from the passenger experience department of the airline. If you want to buy a new seat or a new new cutlery, chinaware, hollowware, decide which wine you want to have, the finance department is going to be absolutely terrible when you come to them and ask for budget. They're going to say, what's the ROI? Yet airlines, when it comes to anything from IATA, like NDC, it seems that airlines say, oh, yes, we should integrate it because it's the industry standard, but they haven't decided what they want to do. I would say that the way you measure the ROI is the same as the way you measure the ROI for any other commercial initiative, for any pricing strategy, for any promotion. How many passengers are you going to get? How much revenue are they going to generate? And how much is it going to cost you? That's how you calculate it. But you got to know what you're going to sell before you can calculate those numbers. So the secret to calculating the ROI is simply to figure out what you're going to sell. Now, it might well be that you say, we want to sell this particular thing, and the ROI is terrible. Well, that's actually great. That's great news, because it means that you've discovered something that you should not be selling using NDC. So you can then go and look for something else. And that's the agile, fail fast, fail quickly approach that I was describing earlier.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'll jump in though, Daniel, because there's a couple things that we absolutely know. We know that if airlines are buying hotels through the GDS or using a white label OTA product, they're losing money, right? Those companies are taking significant margin off the table. So a direct connect by definition is going to give them significantly higher margin on that sale. The cost of integrating, they need to figure out, right? That's where other third parties can come in and help with those direct connections, minimize the cost of that transaction. But without question, you know, an airline that can sell a hotel through a direct connect with that hotel brand is going to be making significantly more, and by that at least probably 10 to 15% more per room per night than an airline that is trying to sell through an Expedia or a GDS.
But at the same time, are they not adding complexity because of servicing issues, payment challenges, and those kind of things? Where does it weigh off? Where does it pay out?
That depends on order structure and how you've determined what you're doing. So if as an airline, I'm now selling a white label, fully bundled product, I may have some servicing complexity to deal with. If, however, what I'm doing is taking a direct connect from a major hotel brand or a local hotel in my destination, taking a higher margin, that hotel can still own the customer experience on the ground. However, I can still provide a better customer experience, because if my flight, which I do control as the airline, is delayed or canceled, I can notify everybody else in that supply chain, this is happening. So tell the rental car company that the passenger is going to be 4 hours late. Tell the golf course that they're not going to make their tee time. Tell the hotel when you do your night audit, don't give that room away because they're not arriving till 2 a.m. local time. You're still dramatically increasing the customer experience while increasing the revenue per trip.
It can work the other way around as well. And I can imagine some really creative ideas. So imagine, for example, the hotel actually tells the airline that say we're talking, Chris was saying that there's a lot of airlines from India. So imagine Vistara, for example, which is famous for the high quality of its onboard meals. Imagine if the hotel actually told Vistara every Saturday night in our hotel is kind of barbecue night. That means that the airline doesn't serve barbecue food on its flights to that destination on a Saturday, so that the passenger actually gets a different meal in the hotel to what they've had on the plane. I see lots of creative opportunities to use this, to think in this way, and that's the way that you guys out there at the airlines need to be thinking to make this a success.
I think that goes well then to segue to one of the questions that also popped up here on the screen, which is who owns the booking record when those offers are, they have all these different entities. And Stig, I'd like to ask you, I mean, owning the booking and owning the customer kind of, it always goes into that direction of the conversation, right? And so who owns the booking and who owns the customer? Or I mean, the customer owns himself, obviously, but
yeah, it's coming back to maybe who's the merchant. So if the airline is the merchant and it's being booked via their booking platform, and hopefully in the future through NDC, and obviously the airline will own that customer and own that customer data. So they will only provide the data to us, so we are having that car ready for them. We may be having an agreement that we can use the email to contact that customer to do a digital check-in, for example, because we know that customer want to have a much more contactless experience now in this COVID times. So, but yes, it's the airline, from our perspective, is the owner of that customer.
Very good. There are a lot of other questions here coming up on the screen. I'm going to take one more before I go back to my question list, and it kind of, because it goes back to with the technology around the NDC and the standard that we were talking about before, and it's a question that says, will OTA 2.0 crack this normalization before NDC does for non-air products? I don't know, Scott, can I hand that to you?
Yeah, so we work a lot with that standard body also. I do believe that they are far more further along on this journey than NDC has, and I do see opportunity for IATA and NDC standard board to really work with OTA and incorporate a lot of that, because at the end of the day, everybody's just trying to make the travel journey seamless for everybody, right? And it shouldn't be a chest beating contest over whose standard is the one that wins. It should be the standard that actually solves the freaking problem. I do think OTA 2.0 is significantly further along in normalizing this data stream across all of the verticals.
Now I'm going to circle back to where we were kind of there on the servicing part. We touched on the servicing part, and I think that's, for me, that's one of the topics that keeps coming up in conversations with airlines and vendors alike. But from a customer experience perspective, is it clear to me that do I call the airline now, or do I call the hotel, or do I call Avis, or who do I call in which situation, and does the customer have to know?
Yeah,
that's a very interesting question. So from time to time, I go to industry events, and from time to time there are startups there, many of whom specialize in voice-activated technology. So, hey Google, I want to buy my holiday in Greece now. And actually then the Google speaker or the Alexa or whatever it is that's handling this takes care of everything. So I would question whether it's the airline or the hotel that the passengers are actually going to go to. Maybe they're just going to go to their smartphone, and what happens behind the scene, who knows? It's important to remember, though, that they may not, the people who are using this technology may represent the vast majority of passengers. Will they represent the vast majority of revenue? Not necessarily. They might not. So be careful there.
Aside from the fact that you just did trigger my Google actually when you said that. Does this mean that we should be relying more on technology also to solve that problem? So these voice activated or through the mobile self-servicing and these kind of things, and then we've got the technology to sort out where is the customer going to be directed to without the customer actually having to know or care.
I think of it a little differently in that, so the airline's going to want to put everything on the P&R in the order, right? Like that's what airlines do. I don't know that's really necessary, and to me that's a construct. So if I fly, an airline somewhere, even if I bought my hotel through them, I know what hotel I'm staying at. And so if I have an issue while I'm on property, I'm not going to call the airline and complain. I'm going to deal with the hotel. I think that we can use technology to direct customers, no matter who they reach out to, in a seamless journey like this. But I think it's an artificial construct that because it's sold and it's sitting on a P&R, that means the airline has to do everything. If I own a hotel and I've got a guest who's unhappy, I'm going to want to deal with that. I'm not going to want them to call, BA or Air India or whoever to have them then call me and resolve that problem. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we're making a big deal about a small issue that the players all are going to figure out. Stig, Avis isn't going to defer customer service issues with a vehicle rental back to the airline that sold it. You're going to deal with that on the lot. Like, hotels are going to do the same.
Yes, Stig, I assume as Avis budget, you probably want to deal with it because you want to hear about the problem. Otherwise, you can't improve your service going forward, right?
Oh, absolutely, and that's absolutely. So that's what we absolutely want to take the learnings from that, and of course we are working through with our partners and having an open dialogue to get the right information to the customers, and that's the beauty of working with a brand like ourselves, because we're operating in 180 countries, so we can also do that customer complaint in the language of the customer in the country where they live. So it doesn't matter. And we will deal with that internally wherever you rent it globally. But it's also going back to what Scott said, is that it's having its benefits as well. If it's some disruption or changes to the flight, it can be automatically changed. The time of the pickup of the car can automatically also be changed, so we are aware that the flight is late. We will wait for the customer, also if it's in the middle of the night. So it's making it much more seamless. But again, like what Scott said, it's depending on if it's pre-travel or if it's during travel or post-travel. It's maybe it's a different way of how the customer are sort of dealing with the different elements depending on where on the journey they are as well. But I just wanted to say as well, when we talk about making it more seamless, because we are making it, could make it much more seamless for the agents as well. To the travel agent, if they're speaking to the travel agent, it's going to be easier to add products if it's coming through through NDC. But I also mentioned initially as well about frequent flyer points and miles, because that can be a challenge depending on the products they're selling. I'm sure this is the same challenge with hotels. The hotels maybe are providing a different earn structure if you're booking via the airline compared to if you're booking via a broker or an OTA, etc. And when the airline are providing the content into OTA or a travel agent, and the travel agent OTA, because they don't get the car or the hotel from the airline, they may be using some other aggregators, etc. Maybe the earn proposition can't be applied. And for the end consumer then to understand what do I earn on this, I think it would be much more seamless in that way as well, is that it could be a clear message. This is the products, if you book it, you will earn this. And this is kind of messaging also the airline can do and use through NDC if they're selling their own products.
But Stig, to just dig a little deeper on that, I mean, talking about, let's say, the OTAs, are they even interested in the airlines providing that additional content? Don't they get better commissions if they offer that directly? And so they probably maybe don't want the airline, so they'll ignore the offer, they'll rank it down.
Yeah, I think that you can't find one solution that fits everyone. I think you will not achieve that. So yes, if you're talking about the massive OTA, which are turning around for millions, they will have great commercial deals anyway, and having the great deals, and therefore they maybe don't want to sell the products which is being offered by the airlines through, for example, NDC. But then you also have the small OTAs, so smaller travel agencies, which may be operating in one market, which maybe can't get those commercial deals, and therefore the airline is quite powerful because they maybe have some greater commercial deals because they are selling those products on the website today. So by providing those services through the NDC, they can also maybe provide better commercials than what the OTAs or the travel agent can get in the first place. And they can still earn. And you're more the airline and more revenue the airline can generate, you're more maybe override and other bonuses they are able to achieve as well.
Conor, you guys serve multiple airlines with your APIs, and in some cases booking engine, in some cases they consume just the APIs that, or use the APIs then for NDC channels. Do you see an increase in how many airlines are selling how many products as well that are non-air? Has that been picking up, or has it kind of been stagnating and it needs a kick now? I mean, maybe that's why we're on this call, right? But I don't know. How has that been developing?
Yeah, so we used to see two categories of airlines who come to us looking for NDC. One, where the CEO has kicked the CIO to say, get NDC on the platform. You just want to be there from an IATA perspective. You need to be certified. The second one is the more strategic approach. And they have tended to focus a lot of what you're talking about here, first around order servicing and getting the order servicing parts correctly. And that's all around having an order management system that can manage that for you. But we're starting to see now, and it's in its infancy, a little bit more focus on the actual offer itself and what type of offer and products to put in front. So it's still quite small. So the type of things we're seeing at the moment is, very special fare family. So a particular corporate user or leisure user gets a specific fare family only designated to a particular group of individuals. So within our dynamic fare family capability, that's something that they can get, that, a particular corporate user gets, free Wi-Fi and fast track through the airport type of thing. So we're starting to see some of those products come through. It's still isolated to a small number of airlines who are thinking strategically. We've a larger number of airlines who are probably still in that box of, we just want to take and get on the NDC ladder, and we'll move on from that. But we're starting to see more products come through, specifically around, I suppose, what I would term dynamic fare families, or bundled products for specific sets of groups come through the system. Is where we're seeing most change at the moment.
And is it? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Conor, because Daniel, because Conor mentioned something there about the package deals, because many of the airlines are also having a holiday arm, and they are already doing package deals with some of the core products. And that's also would be quite interesting to look at the opportunity to provide those package deals through NDC as well as a bundle. And maybe that's also a starting point.
Correct. But essentially, our philosophy in Datalex very much is you get access to the underlying content that's available to you. And that can be any air, any ancillary, any third-party content. And then based on the data points available to you at that point and the user at that point, you decide how to bundle those together. So in real time, we will create the most relevant package. So this kind of traditional approach of dynamic packaging, and you package certain products, that's not where we're going in Datalex. We're very much focused in terms of, in real time, using data and AI, being able to determine what products to bundle together to offer to a user. So we're starting to see it in its infancy in that area. So when I talk dynamic fare families, that's where I'm kind of talking to in terms of seeing that kind of initial approach come through from some airlines.
There's a question actually just came in, and maybe this even goes on sort of on the whole packaging and how we generate revenue, maybe how you calculate this. And the question is, it seems that there's no stopping point in the advancement of technology and machine learning and computer calculate speed and those kind of things. So the models can become more complicated. And the question goes on, I guess I think it's then asking, is there some point, a tipping point where the technology can't help anymore, and we might be actually getting less in terms of revenue or less in terms of customer satisfaction because technology's gone too far or taken over too much of it, and we've taken our brain out of it. I don't know, Oliver, in terms of product revenue and those things.
I think this is a fascinating topic, and it comes down to the question of what do you want the technology to do, and what sort of technology do you actually want running your airline, running your hotel, running your travel service. So there's a lot of talk in the airline industry right now about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that's all well and good. But I think we're talking too much about artificial intelligence and machine learning, which relies on specific algorithms doing things that specific people have told them to do that are proprietary, private, and owned by one organization. What we're not talking about enough, I think, is blockchain-based technology. Now, blockchain, for those who aren't familiar with it, is quite different to AI-based technology because blockchain is more of a public technology, more of a public computation. So imagine if we had an airline who was using AI and machine learning to do their revenue projections, and they were collecting revenue, selling tickets, much as they do now, and it's basically pros or saber plus to the next generation with artificial intelligence technology. But with blockchain technology coming in, airlines actually have a completely different opportunity, because what they can do is airlines can actually outsource the commercial optimization process, and they can say, okay, I'm British Airways, Daniel, Conor, Stig, Scott, and everyone else out there, you use your computer to solve my optimization problem and figure out what product to distribute to the customers. Then we will reward you for the proof of work in the same way that a Bitcoin or an Ethereum coin or anything is sent through a distributed ledger. We will reward you with a travel benefit for our own service. So you solve my optimization problem, I give you 1,000 Avios. If you solve 10,000 optimizations for me, I give you a free club seat. And if you solve 10 million optimizations for me, I give you free travel for life. You know, I think that might lead to better outcomes, because the whole issue with the Pros, Sabre, Amadeus ecosystem is it's all based on standards that were set a long time ago, based on technology that was built in the 1960s and have never really changed, and that the scope of innovation is very low. I think that artificial intelligence and machine learning are not technologies that I would invest in if I was an airline right now. I think that it's more of the same. I think that the same mistakes that have been made in the past are going to be replicated with those technologies. I'd be looking much more towards open source and blockchain instead as a way of getting my products out and optimizing my revenue.
Scott, you guys are tech providers.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I agree with a lot of what Oliver said. So I think that the first thing I'd start with is the technology is from the 60s and 70s, right? We're still talking about XML as if it's cutting edge technology in this industry. It's not, right? So recognize that there is a lot of growth that does need to happen. And yeah, if you optimize a system based on stuff that you did in the 60s, you're not going to forward leapfrog over into competing with Amazon or a digital provider, whatever it is that you're trying to sell. So I 100% agree with that. Whether blockchain is the right answer to that or not, I don't know. I do know that blockchain brings the ability to start piecing together different loyalty programs in a very secure way. It's a great way to authenticate that you are talking about the same user across all of the different travel verticals, because loyalty is the one place where everybody's had to invest in security, right? Because you get defrauded really quickly if you don't. So maybe blockchain makes sense from that perspective, because it naturally kind of supports that kind of digital fingerprint that authenticates who you are as you move forward. How airlines go about trying to optimize their revenue management strategy, I'm not sure. I do also think that
ledger rather than blockchain itself.
Yeah, here's where I differ, maybe not from Oliver, but from the question itself. So So airlines are going to want to yield more, right? So they're going to be pushing for higher yielding hotel rooms, higher yielding, higher margin car rentals. You know, the flip side is those other industries aren't just laying back waiting to be ravaged by the airlines, right? They're going to be competing on products and services. They're going to have their own very counter to the airlines pricing methodology. And those two forces they've always done this, right? And they're gonna continue to do that. Speeding it up, yeah, somebody's gonna have an advantage, just like in automated trading. Like if you can get there a millisecond faster, you're gonna have an advantage until the other people also update their computer, and then that advantage is gone. So I don't have a concern that we're gonna automate ourselves out of margin for hotels or rental cars or airline margin, right? I think they're just tools that make everybody smarter. Some people are going to screw up and Darwin's going to kick him in the head, and then the industry will move on.
And I want to take the blockchain part of the discussion on maybe with a bit of a different angle, not so much going as far as the compute power might result in something, but blockchain more from a perspective of a single order, because sort of Paul Byrne commented here in the questions that, you know, if the airline is the merchant of record in our scenarios here, you know, if they just have a single order, like the one order concept that IATA has been talking about, you know, that could be blockchain, doesn't have to be whatever, but if there's a single order that everybody then accesses to make their changes and updates, that's probably an aspect that will help, but probably needs a lot more alignment than we're at now. And I think goes back to what Scott, I think you said beginning, we can't even name our customer the same. So how do we get to a single order type of record wherever that sits? Isn't that a challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah. So but speaking of that, of sort of a blockchain type of order, or just a single order, I mean, would that be a vision we'd look to, or would Avis always say, no, we always need our own order record, and it needs to be sitting in our database. We're not going to give part of the active order to an airline to manage, even if we have access to it all the time. I mean, is that a vision that we have, or do we need to do that via a blockchain type where that block belongs to Avis and the other block belongs to the airline? Is that the direction we'd have to go instead of a single retail order sitting in the airline's remit, for example? I don't know, Stig, how do you feel about the data ownership bit of that?
It's a very interesting, I'm going to talk about blockchain as well, because we also started to use blockchain to sort of check the customer's driving license, so we can actually use more contactless technology, so we can provide a vehicle out which is maybe worth 50,000, and we need to obviously do some checks before we give it out. And maybe in this conversation, it's sort of almost working with the airlines to use maybe blockchain to check the passport details. Maybe that could be very helpful also for the hotel, so that they don't need to ask for the hotel. They ask for the passport again when they check into the hotel. Like everything have been checked. Maybe that's an opportunity also to check the details for the driving license details as well. But in the end of the day, for us, we obviously need to get certain data and information for being able to check that this is actually a genuine customer, which we can give this vehicle out to. I don't know if that gives an answer to your question, but it's very interesting to have those kind of conversations to see what more can we maybe do together, and maybe use also blockchain for that.
Yeah, Conor, have you guys at Datalex put any thought around blockchain and managing an order between all these different entities in any way, shape, or form? Or are we too far away from that in our industry?
Well, I think for blockchain, I think it has certain applications, but in Datalex, we don't see that as the ultimate solution to solve for this. If you go back though, if we think, you know, we talk about the airline, we talk about these third parties, the ultimate customer, and from a customer perspective, the customer is going to want to see every aspect of their trip, every aspect of all of the order items that they have associated with their trip. So someone is going to go after trying to solve for that. So what we see is not necessarily a single system that holds all of the data, but a single system that has access to all aspects of the data across all systems. So what you're going to find is, whether it's blockchain or another sort of transformation layer that will exist, or servicing layer that will exist between the different systems, each individual product or service that a user is looking at across all aspects of their trip and order, a customer is going to want to be able to view all aspects of that. And the air segment, and what the airlines do at the moment, is one element of that. What the third parties provide is another element of that. But there's many other elements in that. And what you need is a single, when you think of one order, you know, forget IATA's vision. You see, it's just one vision of being able to put all aspects of all products or service that have been offered to you into a single system that you can access and do that. And then we just see, you need a single system that can translate those between the different systems and deliver this.
And sort of circling back, we've got about 8 or 9 minutes left in all of this. So circling away from blockchain and the future technologies that might help us. Have any of you been involved in proof of concepts or initial implementations where we've actually been trying to use NDC as the vehicle to get content between third party, out of an airline's view, third party content to the airline, or has nobody tried to get there with NDC yet?
So we've done direct connectivity based on the OTA standard, which is not, you know, disaligned with NDC, with rental car, hotel, and airline participants. We have not commercialized all aspects of that yet, but we've got 2 separate POCs running that do allow for an airline to merchandise hotel and rental car directly. We just haven't gotten to the point where it's been rolled out, but we've got some pretty cool sandbox environments where we've been able to prove the concept can work.
Okay. What about you, Stig? Avis budget. Have you guys had any? Or I mean, have you just heard about NDC, or have you actually tried to do anything in that space yet?
Absolutely. We have had some discussions with some of the airlines regarding NDC, but at the moment it's not on their agenda to actually opening up for opportunities for having other products filtering through the NDC.
All right. I mean,
let's see. You never know. Maybe now, after maybe some airlines are listening to this, so maybe want to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've got, you know, a lot of people on the call, so who knows? This might energize some. But I mean, aside from the fact that we've probably all had kind of other problems in the last 18 to 24 months, so yeah, probably wasn't on top of everybody's mind. Conor, have you gotten interest signaled from your airline customers that they'd want to move forward with NDC implementations and being able to offer additional content?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, we've signed close to 4 new airline customers through to NDC, or existing customers taking NDC on our side in Q4 of last year alone. So we're starting to see significant traction coming through on our side. Back to your point, whether they're trying to get third-party content through, most of them try and get us to hack that in through our REST services and our ability to do that anyway. So it's kind of back to Scott's point, we do it through a kind of direct connect perspective, and it's not in your purest sense NDC. I mean, the standard's going to evolve, it's going to come through, and eventually we'll get there too. So we're doing it kind of that way. On our direct channel, we back in 2019, 50-60 million passengers booked using third-party content at different points, all complex offers bundled in with this, managed through our order system. So yeah, we're starting to see an NDC is gaining traction, as I mentioned, and we're expecting to see similar in 2022.
What would we, and I'm going to ask each one of you this sort of the closing question, but what would we collectively as an industry have to do to get this, be it via NDC or otherwise, everything more together, be that the order, the servicing, the messaging, the technology? What do we have to do? Because right now we've got IATA, we've got the hotels technology group, we've got all these different groups. what do we need to do, Scott? How do we fix the problem?
I think it comes down to offer order normalization. All right, I think you've got to be able to recognize the same element in each of the various travel verticals. And once you've done that, then packaging everything up is relatively straightforward, in my opinion.
Perfect. Thanks. Oliver?
Agility and incentives. Let's get our staff, our colleagues, people who work at our airlines and our hotels to find out new solutions. And and when they succeed, pay them handsomely for that. Airlines aren't traditionally known for giving out $100,000 or $1 million or $10 million bonuses, but this is the time when they need to. Because if there's somebody in your organization who's really smart, and maybe someone listening, this could be you, if you think of a game-changing idea and you can implement it, that adds a lot of value. You should be paid a lot of money for that. And airlines who inspire their staff to come up with new ideas and implement them, not just tick boxes, they'll be the ones who succeed, and the staff will be able to be well rewarded for it.
Thank you. Conor?
Yeah, so I think there's plenty of vendors out there with an offer management system that can manage these third parties. I think for all airlines listening, I would suggest find a vendor who has an order management system who can handle all of these order items, that doesn't just rely on a PSS underneath to bundle them into a PNR. That's my plug.
Very good. Stig, you're the vendor here of the product. What do you want to see to get your content out more and better?
I think, first of all, I think let's put some time aside together as an airline with all the vendors. Let's sit together to see how we can make this much more seamless than what it is today. How can we find ways for finding new solutions and move this forward? A little bit of the conversations we had today, I think, is more to sort of look into all the opportunities this can bring. And I'm sure everyone wants to earn more money, and I'm sure everyone wants to sell more of the products. But what more can we do together?
Very good. So if I summarize that, we need an offer order normalization. We need agility and incentivization. I think probably on all sides. Once we have an offer order normalization, it'd be good to really have an OMS that can handle multiple sources of content and put them all together. And then it's got to be seamless. It has to be seamless for, I guess, the vendors, the providers, but mostly probably for the customer. And that will probably create opportunities, won't it? All right. So with that, we're almost done. We closed 2 minutes early because you guys all really just kept to very short, concise last words. But listen, thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for your time and the prep we put into this. And with that, I will close this and hand back to Chris.
So I would like to thank you. You can hear me, Daniel?
I can.
Oh, good. So thank you to you and the panel. And I would encourage the audience to look you all up on LinkedIn. I'm sure that their business can be had for all of you, and that's why you spoke. And I'm sure you're speaking publicly because you want to interact with the audience. So please link with all of the speakers on LinkedIn. And here's 2 future events we have. This Modernizing Pricing and Revenue Management is a virtual event. So check that out using the QR code, and we have our first physical event in London. It's in payments, but payments is another area of NDC that really hasn't been worked out yet. So you can join that event physically in London, and I think I will be meeting Oliver there for the first time physically. So I look forward to that. So with that, thanks to the panel, thanks to the audience, and hope to see you at one of these future events. So thanks, guys, and reach out to everyone on LinkedIn. Thanks, guys, and signing off.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.